Right guys, we're back working on Greg's Cummins-swapped Land Rover Defender this week, and as you can see the engine has now got a coat of top coat on it. Unfortunately I ran out of paint, and the paint I ordered has been sent by Every, which means they've tried to deliver it 6 times in the past month and it still hasn't arrived. Hopefully that will arrive soon, and in today's episode we will finish off painting this and we will get it going, so look forward to that. I'll show you how we got to this stage later on and show you the next step forward. But to begin with, what we're going to be doing while we're waiting for the paint to arrive is beginning working on the vehicle itself. So what I want to do is get the wings, bonnet and anything in that area out, the gearbox out, the transfer box out, because we have to do a bit of welding on the chassis to get the mounts in, and I don't want to damage Greg's lovely paint job, and that's going to give us much better access from the side to do all the things we need to do. So let's crack on with that and we'll catch up with the engine later. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right, so now the wangs are off, we can have a bit of a better look at what's going on. So things that have got to go: power steering reservoir, doing, 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 doing. So we don't need that anymore because the electric pump will have a built-in reservoir. Gearbox, that's quite a big one. That can go with the transfer box attached to it, so we'll have to take the prop off. Engine mounts, I think they've got to move. I need to have a bit more of a look over the instructions, but I think they've got to move, so they'll have to come off. Zip pipe, obviously, that can go. That's on the wrong side now anyway, because the turbine is over here. Air intake, so we'll try and retain some of this. The turbo will be somewhere over here with the intake in front, I guess, or maybe somewhere back here. So perhaps we'll only use this part of it and have a 90 and come around here or something and up into it. We'll work that out when we get to it, so we're a long way off that. But yeah, let's get some of this rubbish out of the way and get involved. So I'm just underneath the vehicle now, so we can see the transfer case here. Lovely bit of filming there. And I've just undone the rear prop shaft. So once we pull the gearbox forward, that's ready to come off. The front prop shaft is also undone at that end. I'll probably have to undo it at this end, or maybe just pull that end out to give us room to take everything forward. I've still got to get the gearbox to transfer box mounts off, and I'm just taking the exhaust mounts off now. But what I do find quite funny is, you know, I remember when I got that ramp over there, you think to yourself, wow, everything's going to change from now on, you know, everything's going to be so easy and so straightforward, and I never see myself lying on the floor again. But it is rather remarkable how often you find yourself laid on the floor next to the ramp because there's some heap of junk stuck on it. So yes, still lying on concrete floors. I'm not sure that's ever really going to change. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe we'll leave the exhaust alone. Right, the zip pipe is now off, and the shaft here is all strapped up, so that's all looking rather good. But to get the gearbox out, we'll need to get the stick gear off. So obviously don't want any of this because that can't really go that way because that's there. So we're going to actually, I think we're probably going to take this middle seat out and take all the tunnel out. Now you wouldn't have to take the seat out normally, but because we're going to be in here doing some cutting and massaging for our new gearbox, it would be beneficial to have a bit more room. So let me get on with that, and yeah, let me yank these sticks off and we'll whip the gearbox out then. Meant. Great then, this is what progress looks like. So I've just got on and taken all these bits out without filming too much because it's all rather boring and all rather dark in here, so you can't see a lot very interesting. But the gearbox tunnel is out, both seats are out, well, all 3 seats are out, sorry. All the rubber's out of there. Start disconnecting all the linkages, etc. for the gearbox and the plugs and all that sort of wiring loom clips and gubbins and stuff. And we have found a bit of rot down in here, bit of metal mite down in the bottom of the bulkhead there and the floor pan where everything sits. So that's going to be on our list of repairs when we've got the welder out. We will tackle that, but beyond that, the gearbox and transfer box are now, I'd say, ready to come out. All that needs to happen, well, I say that, they're not ready to come out, they're nearly ready to come out. I need to take that cross member off that you can see down there, so that's just a bolt in, bolt out jobby. And then the mount, so there's, I think there's only 2, might be 3, but 2 or 3 mounts, definitely 2. 2 mounts, we'll take those out, and then the whole thing will simply drop down in a smooth and controlled manner. So just investigating this rotten bulkhead a bit further, and I'm going to pull the floor pan out. You can see there's other screws up here, but everything they're attached to has disappeared. And I'm just trying to get these last little screws out, but unfortunately they're all so badly rotten you can't really get to them. So I'm going to try just cutting a slot in them first and turning them basically into like a flathead drive screw, and that'll put a bit of heat into them and give us a bit more purchase with a flathead screwdriver. If that doesn't work, we'll just have to cut the heads off and deal with the problem later. Well, that didn't work, so we'll continue cutting them all out. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just some Land Rover things going on here. Just some Land Rover things. So you can now see the cross member a bit better. And those bolts there. What I might do is actually just take the floor pan out the other side. And then I might be able to do the bolts from the top, because I'm going to be honest, I have been avoiding taking that cross member out and just filling in by doing other things, because I hate lying on the floor in the concrete. So I'm going to take the other floor pan out, because I think it needs to come out anyway for when we cut round the transmission tunnel. This side definitely, that side maybe, but it's going to make it easier anyway. So let's do that. Whip that cross member out, then out with the box, out with the tranny. So I'm just whipping off this this aircon unit. So you won't see this on every Defender, but this is like a bolt-on aircon unit. So this goes up underneath the dash, and this truck at the moment actually doesn't have any of the aircon grill, but it doesn't have any of the condensers or pumps or anything on it. I guess it had the pump on it when the engine was taken out of it, but I did speak to Greg and he said it wasn't actually ever working. So I don't think we're going to be getting it working with this engine anyway, because we don't have a compressor or probably room for a condenser or anything. As much complexity that's no longer required. So we'll have a chat with him, but you might want to leave this out anyway, because you do get a little bit more leg room without this in here. But by unbolting this, it lets us take this rubber mat out of this side, and again it just gives us a bit more room when we got to get in around the tunnel there and do a bit more massaging. Every sort of step you can take to make your life just a little bit easier in the future does speed things up. Because, you know, although this all takes time preparing the vehicle, it just makes everything much simpler as you move forward and stops you damaging so much stuff, which is what we want. Yeah, so this is like a little bit less bad version of the other side, but it is on its way. So I'm not sure if there's actually, you can buy repair sections for this, or maybe we'll just make our own out of some sheets. But let me know in the comments if you know of a good place to get repair panels for this, and I'll crack on and get the gearbox out now. Right, ready? Yep. Hup. Oh yeah.
Hang on.
I'm hanging on because I'm... Hang on. You lift from the back, yeah?
Well, I'm not lifting the front. Ready?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Oh, hang on, whoa.
Oh, I got them.
It's still wide in here, Scott.
No.
Yeah, no, it is.
What is?
Well, the gearbox.
What do you mean the gearbox?
There's a wire that goes to the bolt that's kept to the bit we're trying to lift out.
Oh, will I do that? Oh, that's a freaking breather, isn't it?
No, it's definitely electrical.
Oh. Are you ready?
No. Really? Ready?
Ready?
Yep.
Up. Shall I say again?
Oh, hang on. This isn't working for me, Scott. Yeah, I'm ready.
Alright. Up.
I'm gonna. Yeah, it's just I can't really lift it. It's because I'm pulling for my life.
Right, you want it? Ah, yeah, so if we can't hold it there, you go round, okay?
Yeah.
Grab those. So unfortunately my phone stopped recording at this point, but I can assure you that the super lightweight gearbox and transfer box simply floated out without any assistance from any mechanical machinery at all. Right, so I got one of the core plugs out here. I've just given it a bit of a clean up with some Scotch-Brite. That actually came out far easier than I expected. So I'm just knocking them out with a hammer and punch. Pull them out and clean that all up. Brake clean, everything. Make it all nice and shiny. And then we'll hammer in these new plugs with a bit of sealant just to hold them in. In theory, the plugs should stay in there on their own, but the sealant will just help them from, or sealing, really, will help them seal. So I'm going to finish this one off and rinse and repeat on these three. So as you can see, the core plugs are now all in and seated. I've also, earlier on today, finished off the thread repair on all the exhaust manifold mounting points. Now, if we have a look at this one, so this is obviously the one that rotted through. Now, this one sits in the back corner of the engine, and this is where most of the bad stuff is happening. So I assume when it was in the lorry, it was getting a bit of a drip from here, and that was all running down the side of this engine. The rest of these core plugs are actually all okay. So that one's obviously starting to get a bit crusty there, but the rest of them still nice and thick, haven't rotted through, which is good because that means it's not rotting through from that side. This one's rotted from this side in, so not the inside out, which means that these other ones up here and all around the engine should be okay, which is good news. So we're only going to replace these ones for now, and this means that we can go ahead and crack on and paint the engine now. Right, well, as you can see, the engine block has had its final coat of paint, and I'd say it's looking rather delightful. So what I'm going to do now is take all the masking, all the protective bits off. We've also got a number of green bits down here which are waiting to go on, and then once the engine's demasked and ready to go back together, we will throw all the bits on it and fire it up. So let's get on with it. So I began by fitting the exhaust manifold, and the first job was to tap and chase through the existing threads to remove any remnants of paint, rust or general grime which will affect the bolts as we do them up. And then I applied a bit of copper slip to our new bolts. This will stop them from hopefully seizing up in the future. Right, so we have ourselves here a shiny new exhaust manifold. So I'm not sure if I showed you before, but the previous one was very rotten, and a lot of these gasket faces were ruined, and there were a load of stuck studs in them. So for the time and money it would have taken to repair them, it was more cost effective to get a new one. We've also got a load of new gaskets and some new bolts because a load of them snapped or were just wrecked. So we copper slipped up the new bolts. We've now got to put the gaskets on and put the exhaust manifold on, bolt that all up, and move on to the next job. So I've just got the front timing cover off here, and I'm just getting ready to put the pump gear back in place so we can put the fuel pump back on. While I'm in here, I'm just doing a bit of housekeeping, a bit of tidying, bit of cleaning, taking the old gasket off, cleaning all the old silicone off. And another thing we're going to be doing while we're in here is one of these. So this is the killer dowel pin kit. And up here, if you don't know what the killer dowel pin is that little thing there. So this is written in a lot of American folklores, and it's killed many an engine over time. Now, I don't know why some engines seem to have it. I don't know if it's where they were built or how they were built or if you tune them up. But obviously, this engine seems okay. But what happens is the dowel pin in there, which is used to align this timing case, rattles loose, pops out because it's only held in by like a press fit. And it can slip out and then it gets stuck in these gears. And obviously if it comes down here, or I'm not 100% sure which way around these gears go, that way, so it'll probably come down through here maybe. Anyway, it gets stuck in between the gears and pushes all apart and either splits the casing or splits your gears apart, or, you know, basically destroys your engine. And what you can do is get this one of these little kits here. So this bolts into this bolt here. So you take this bolt out, and then this little billet piece sits in front of that pin and stops it from being able to ever pop out. This engine's obviously done a lot of miles and it's not started to work its way out, but it's a couple of quid. While we're in here, it bomb-proofs it forever. Sort of just in case kind of deal. Oh yeah, one-handed whoosh. Now, an important thing to mention is I have heavily Loctited this bolt because the last thing you want is to install your killer dowel pin kit and then that be the thing that falls off and ruins your engine. So yeah, get some thread locker on that puppy. Right, I'll do this up and we'll carry on with the other stuff. Right, so I'm preparing to put our injector pump back on now. I've just chased all these threads down. I'm going to clean up this face, take the paint off it. I pre-greased it so it doesn't stick. We don't want that underneath our gasket or our pump. I'm also going to take off this tappet cover and I'm going to redo this seal on here because these are a classic one for leaking and it's quite easy to do with everything off, but a right pain otherwise. So we'll do that and then we'll get our new gasket on, put our injection pump on, and then the front timing cover can go on. We can start working on injector lines and all the rest of that funny business. So I've got the tappet cover off now, and I thought this might be a little bit interesting for you that maybe don't know quite so much about engines or haven't seen quite so much inside of engines, because you can see a lot of how all this works now. So if we look and start here, I've got the crankshaft here, which all your pistons and rods are attached to. So your pistons are going up and down inside the cylinders, and that's turning the crankshaft. That crank gear there then turns this, which is your camshaft, and the cams in these engines run all the way down through the block along here. Now that camshaft pushes up and down on these little tappets, so they run on the lobes of the cam and move up and down as the engine goes round. And these tappets push the push rods up when they ride up on the cam lobes. And those push rods go up through the block, push on these rockers here, which then run on a little bearing here, and push down on the valves there. And then as it comes off its cam lobe, the tappet comes down off its cam lobe, the push rod goes down, the valve spring pulls the valve back up, or pushes the valve back up, shutting off the valve, letting air in and out of the engine, and allowing it to run. So I'm just going to clean off that gasket face, clean off that cover, wrap the new seal around it, tuck it all away, never to be seen again. Right, so we've got the fuel pump here on the bench at the moment. We're going to have to do a little bit of arts and crafts. So the gasket hasn't arrived for the pump to timing case. So we're going to make our own out of some gasket paper. And while it's on the bench as well, we're going to be changing out this little solenoid here. So these engines are obviously 24 volt in the lorry, but in the Land Rover it will be 12 volt. And to ensure reliability and good working order, we're going to change out this little stop solenoid here. So this solenoid is what turns the fuel on and off for the pump, and obviously that's a 24 volt one, and this is a 12 volt one. These are much easier to change out of or off of the engine because it's a bit of a pain to get in there with all the pipes and everything around it. So we'll do that now while it's here. This is one off just the 300 TDI Land Rover because it's just a standard Bosch pump. We're not going to change this one, so this is just a cold start solenoid. For real cold starts, that gives you a bit of timing advance. I think we don't really need that where we're going. So let's get on, make the gasket up, put the stop solenoid in, and then the pump can go back on the engine. Right, so we're now going to put the pump on the engine. I've already aligned the gear and timed it up to the right timing mark. So all we've got to do is put the keyway on the pump and the keyway on the timing gear and bolt her all up. Here we go. So the pump is now pretty much on. We got these three nuts done up around holding the casing to the casing. We haven't done up this big front nut yet because we've still got the camshaft locking pin in, and that's only a little plastic nub, so we don't want to snap that. So we'll pull that out. We can then torque up that nut, and then we're going to take the rocker covers off. We'll tighten up the bottom balancer. We'll take the rocker covers off. Then we can do the cold valve lash on it. So we will do the valve clearances while the rocker cover's off. And then the new painting wads can go back on. Fuel lines can go back on. And we're starting to get somewhere there. We're not far off firing it up. So I've got all the rocker covers off now, and we're now going to set the valve lash. Now, the reason why we're doing this is if you remember earlier, I showed you how all the push rods and cam and tappets work. Well, those mechanical parts, and over time, they wear. And what happens is, as they wear, the clearance between the top of the valve here and your rocker arm changes, it gets bigger. And that means your valve isn't opening quite at the right time and for quite long enough. So what you do is you adjust this little bolt here, which pushes down further on the push rod and tightens that clearance back up. And that just makes sure your engine's smooth and efficient and as quiet as possible. I'm not going to show you how to do it because there's plenty of videos online of how to do a 6BT Cummins valve lash. But essentially, we're rotating the engine over till the valves on this cylinder go into overlap. So one is going down and one is coming up. One rocker's going down and one rocker's going up. This side will then be nice and loose. We can set our lash using our feeler gauges. They're different to the intake and exhaust. Again, all the specs are online. Set them by undoing this lock nut and adjusting that screw. Tighten everything back up, and then we work our way down through the engine and set them all as we go. And then once that's done, we can put all the rocker covers back on. That's that side of things done. And yeah, we can then get on to putting stuff like the injectors and the fuel lines on. Now this is just sort of a maintenance thing for these engines, and with the mileage of this engine's clearly had, it's probably about time it was done. So we got the 2 feeler gauges here. So our intake spec is 10 thousandths of an inch. So that's the clearance between these two parts. And our exhaust valve spec is 20 thousandths of an inch, which is nice and easy to remember. So that's the clearance between there. Now, as I say, we're putting these little feeler gauges into here, and we're just checking, you know, they don't want to be tight. They want to be able to go in fairly easily, but they're a little bit loose. There's still quite a lot of movement in that rocker there. So that one's going to want tightening up. The exhaust valve isn't quite so bad. So that is our valve adjustment done. Now let's go ahead and put our new gaskets and rocker covers on. You'll notice that this rocker cover has a hole in it, which those ones don't. And that's because our oil fill in the lorry was down in there where we've blocked off, but we don't need that anymore. So we just want to be able to fill it up at the front of the engine. So let's get on with it. So unfortunately there's 2 styles of rocker cover for these engines. There's this style, which you see has a little indent here where the bolt goes down through, and that one of these rubber grommets should sit in there. And the style it had on originally was this, where they don't have an indent and they just use a little O-ring on one of these bolts to seal against that face. Now this is the more modern, better style of rocker cover. Unfortunately, our gasket set didn't come with a load of those new grommets. So for the moment, we're just using the bolts and the washers. That'll be okay for firing up, and we'll get the proper gaskets and the proper little rubber seals ordered, and we can fit those bolts back in at a later date. I then went on to fit the injectors, again with copious amounts of copper slip, to ensure that future me, or future Greg, doesn't have any rust or seizing issues. Right, I'm now working on assembling the fuel system. If you didn't watch the first video on this build, you wouldn't have seen that the engine, when we took it apart, was very crusty, and a lot of these lines were rotten or they broke when we took them off. So we got brand new injector lines and all new hard lines. So let's get these on. And we need to try and work out some sort of fuel feed from the lift pump to the filter and into the lift pump. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but it is starting to look rather nice. Okay, so we've got a bit of a fuel system rigged up here. We've got all the hard lines on, we've got the return lines on, down into this T-piece, and this is now just returning back through that pipe into the tank. All this is correct. This is actually the pipe off of this engine, because we put a new lift pump on it. The one off this engine was destroyed, but all that's plumbed up, ready to go. I've had to just make up a bit of a feed here, just a temporary one, using a bit of airline and some fittings. I'm going to go ahead and put some oil in it now, just so I don't get too excited, and then we're going to rig up a pressure gauge, and we'll probably put the turbo on. We'll bolt the turbo on. No, we won't put the turbo on. We're going to rig up a pressure gauge, and we're going to try and block off the turbo feed at the moment. We need to modify the turbo drain because it needs to accept the oil drain from the vacuum pump, which I'll show you in a later video. And I'm also waiting on a T3 gasket for the exhaust manifold for the turbo. So we're not going to put that on yet. We'll just block off the feed and make sure we don't fire oil everywhere. But then once we've got some oil in it, we'll need to rig up the starter and the stop solenoid. We'll crank it over for a little bit and just let it build oil pressure up. And then we'll try and give it some fuel and see if we can fire it up. Okay, so we've got the turbo feed blanked off. We've also got ourselves a little gauge set up here, and I'm just going to put the power leads on. It's got a bit of oil in it. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to level the engine up and check the oil level and just top it up to the correct level. Then we'll crank it over with a battery on it, and we don't want it to start. We're just going to try and bleed the fuel system, and we'd like to pump a bit of oil around the engine and just see that pressure gauge just move slightly, just so I know there is oil everywhere it needs to be. Then we will tighten down the injector lines, give it a bit of power to the stop solenoid, and hope she starts. Okay, so I've got myself a battery and my starter wires all rigged up. I think we're pretty much ready to go. Hang on, let's tell you what we're going to do. To avoid another accidental viral video, oh yeah, could you imagine now? Oh. Get that, and let's take that out, and let's just put that somewhere near there, just in case. But yeah, let's crank her for a bit and see what this gauge does. Booty. So I can see that this one's got diesel and it's squirting everywhere, so I'm going to tighten this one up. This one's also been dribbling diesel everywhere. These ones are dry, so what we'll do is I'm going to put some ear defenders on actually. I'm also going to move the battery out the way of the exhaust because that is unnecessary. And yeah, we'll crank it with the fuel solenoid connected. I might try to pick up on one or two cylinders, it might not. But then once these start squirting diesel, we'll tighten them up. And when they're all tight, it should begin. Okay. Oh yeah. She's gonna go. Going as well, isn't it? Just this one left. Let's make sure this one is loose. Yeah, let's see. Cool. Alright then, just wipe some of that diesel off. Almost. Okay, we're dripping diesel from this side. Let's tighten this fitting up. Running, not good. Good oil cracker. That is chuffing though. Which one was that? That one. So that injector washer is leaking. We might just have to tighten that up a little bit more, so we'll do that in a minute. Let's have a look. No major leaks anywhere. I think that wires just fallen out. Yeah, that's all right. It switched itself off, that's fine. We can cope with it switching itself off. Right, let's try and tighten that up a bit more. Just see, hopefully I've just missed it a bit. And we'll re-torque everything and then try again. Right, well there we have it. She lives, runs. Oh, yeah, it's just a coolant. So the engine all works now, which is good news. It builds oil pressure. I'm happy about that. No real nasty knocking noises or anything of that sort. There's obviously a few little more bits to sort out. We've got to get the alternator mounted, which is over there, and there's a few more green bits. Turbo would be nice. So I'm going to get on. I need to get some pipework ordered and stuff. I'll get the fittings and things for that, and we will finish that off so it's in a sort of suitable state to go in the vehicle in a future episode. One of the next big jobs is to get this transfer box sorted. So if you don't know what we're doing with this transfer box, go back and watch the first episode on this build, and I explained everything we got to do inside of that. But that gearbox is going. We're using the ZF box. So if anyone's looking for an R380, get in touch, because that's a good one that we don't need anymore. And we've obviously got to fix the rust holes on the chassis, so I'll get some floor pans ordered for that, and we'll delve into that. Did also notice a slight problem the other week. This is, although it's the correct gearbox, it's got the wrong tail housing on it. So our adapter plate is meant to bolt onto the back of there, but it's got these lugs and it doesn't have the correct threads for it. So we're on the hunt for a ZF 5-speed out of a DAF 45. This is what it needs to look like. This is the one out of the limousine. As you see, it doesn't have those big brackets on the back, and it's got a, oh, dropped the spanner. Got a couple of threads there. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys. And yeah, it's coming along nicely. We've still got quite a big road ahead of us, but you know, the next big thing is going to be getting the gearbox and transfer box and engine all mated together, and then getting it in there, and then we can work on getting it running in the car. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again next week.